Ricardo, it's a smile for the camera, you know. Can you see everything? You can't hear me? You are, okay, now you're unmuted. So say hi, Ricardo.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now. Now you are live. Welcome to the live, and I'm excited to interview you. You excited to be here?
Well,
You can't play shy today.
I'm doing all right.
You're doing all right. I know. It's craziness what's going on right now. So how's everything where you are? You're in Kingston or Portmore?
I'm in Kingston.
You're in Kingston. How's everything there where you are?
Well, this same like everywhere else in Jamaica, people are concerned about the what is going on with the disease and you know just like everywhere else, you know.
So do you have any friends that have been laid off, or tell us about your family or friends, anybody that you're, because a lot of people right now are really worried about the economy, and lots of people in the hotel industry got laid off. Do you know anybody who's lost a job or anything because of it yet?
No, but I've known persons who like the volume of hours have been cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, and quite a few of them have been working remotely, you know. So
Right.
instead of going into the office, the company would just email them stuff to do and so forth.
Right.
But I've heard of anybody losing their job as a result of what is happening.
I just looked at, I think it was yesterday, the Rio laid off 1,000 workers on the Montego Bay side, and then a whole bunch of other hotels laid off. Hundreds and thousands of people are just getting laid off. It's just craziness right now. Anyway, we're not here to talk about all the doom and gloom. We're here to get people excited with the opportunities that are out there. And so we want you to tell your story and talk a little bit about what you're doing. Now, are you freelancing full time? Is this the source of income for you? Can you hear me, Ricardo? Are you freelancing? I was just asking you if you're freelancing full time, if this is your main source of income.
Well, yes, and like with the with the I buy and sell stock sometimes. So depending on the amount of money that I make.
I think it's a little bit choppy. I think let me just try to see if your microphone keeps
to explore on a wider basis, like have my own trading platform and so forth.
okay. Your microphone it went between mute and unmute for a minute. So you're muted for a little bit of that, but
Well,
you're saying that you do a little bit of trading as well. Is that correct?
No, I was saying that I buy stocks sometimes through a brokerage company.
Okay.
But the aim is one of the areas that I'm thinking about exploring on a broader scale is trading stocks, like for myself.
Okay. I like that. So tell us a little bit about why you wanted to make money on the internet. Why do you want to make money online?
I was working at this establishment, and while I was there working, I wasn't making any progression in the company. So I went back to school and got another degree, and did some additional studies, and then I went in to the manager. And while I was talking to the manager, I was working on a contractual basis, and while I was talking to the manager, the manager made made a statement that there's no possibility that the company was going to take me on full time. there's no guarantee rather.
No guarantee, right?
So I was on the road one day, and then a cousin of mine called me from in the States and said, he has a connection with a work permit if I was interested. So during that time, my contract was up with the company, and the company said that there was no guarantee that they were gonna call me back. So I opted to take the work permit and went to the States. And while I was there working, I was thinking about, what am I going to do after the work permit expires and I come back to Jamaica. And so I was in my dorm one day, and I started going through my email, and then I saw a story with Leighton, and I sat up on my bed and started, reading, perusing it thoroughly. And then I remember the first time I came to one of your training years back, and I scrolled down, and then I saw where she was selling her course, and I recall, I think I messaged you and asked you if this link was credible, because I never wanted to put my credit card on anything that, because a whole lot of scamming was going on. And then you had said, yeah, it was legitimate. And then I was sharing, at the time I was sharing a dorm with one of my friends, and I handed him the phone and said, read a story, read a story. And then while he was there reading it, he was saying that when he returned to Jamaica, he was going to explore that option also. So my journey, or well, when the reason why I decided to come online to work full time online is because it, the catalyst was Leighton's story.
Leighton's story, yes.
Right.
Yeah. What a story.
So that's basic. And then I have another friend who works online, but not on Fiverr. He works with Upwork, and I was talking to him one time, and before I left for the United States to come to work, he works on Upwork, and he was saying that he was making close to $5,000 per month. But when he was introducing me to Upwork and Fiverr, I had already know about the platform, because due to you and your sister's introduction way back. And so when I started telling him that I know all about this already, so he was saying, how come I know all about this and I'm not doing anything?
Right.
And then while I was away, I bought another laptop and say, I'm going to explore this option and see, how things work out.
I love it. So let me ask you this question. What are you doing in your business? What are you doing to make money? Is it transcription, virtual assistant, phone calls? What are you doing?
Most of the jobs I get is transcription, and I get proofreading and editing. I get phone calls sometimes, but mostly transcription.
Mostly transcription.
Mostly transcription.
Okay. And so you sent me a message that you'd made some good money in the past 3 months. How much have you made recently?
Well, I would round it after about $2,000 and change.
$2,000 and change. And how does that make you feel? Do you feel proud of yourself?
Well, yes, I could have made more. And one of the things that I discovered while working online is that, well, there's a number of things. Is that the clients would have a volume of work, right? And they would send you a short file as a testing. And depending on how well you do on that file, then the probability exists that they would replenish your platform with more work, and they would introduce me to their friends who are in similar situations. So like now, there are I have two students in England doing their PhD, and like the interview that they conduct, they would send the transcript to me, and then um they also refer other students to me also. So you have to, even though it might even though it might be like $20 and so forth, and to do an hour file, because sometimes the audios are not clear enough, and you have to research and edit and um play over but replay the audio to get like clarity or an idea of what the person is saying. But if you're supposed to multiply the exchange rate with what you're getting, and remembering that you're operating in a global scale, you're um the world is there at your disposal, so it's very important to deliver good work.
Very true. Yes, it is. All right. So transcription is where you found a lot of success. And we interviewed Duran, sorry, who's also doing transcription. So we're seeing a lot more men get into transcription recently, which is usually a female dominated space. So as a man doing transcription, why do you think more men aren't getting into transcription with it being so lucrative and so many jobs out there in transcription right now?
Well, um,
Your
transcription
comment.
require transcription requires a lot of like patience,
Yes,
right?
right.
Well, transcription. I can't read. I don't know if I'm in a position to say why other male have explored transcription, but from where I sit is that I recognize that transcription requires a lot of patience, and maybe men don't really have the patience to sit down, and because as I mentioned earlier, transcription, you have to research, you have to edit, you have to proofread, you have to format, and from time to time you have to if communicate with the person that you are doing the work for, because um let's say the person's accent is not clear enough, and when you Google what you think you heard or what you think you hear, and then you refer it back to the person and say at 4 minutes and 10 seconds you said this, but so it requires a lot of it requires a lot of patience, and
It does.
I'm not sure if men really.
You're like, you want to leave it at that. That's okay. You can leave it at that. Give me 3 tips for people, whether they're men or women, on doing transcription. Like if somebody wanted to get started with transcription, and let's say they've gone through one of our courses, so they know, the basics, what it is, and some of the tools and stuff. But if you could then talk to that person and give them 3 tips in starting off with their transcription business, what would the tip be?
All right. The first one I would start with is, it doesn't matter how much money you're getting paid. Do an excellent job.
Do an excellent job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you might not know who you're working for, and the person who you're working for might want to refer you to somebody else, and like and or I give you a typical example. I made reference earlier to the student that um currently doing her PhD in England, and she referred one of her friends to me. Um, and this morning I got up about 4 o'clock and I did a job for a client. And after I finished the job, the client paid me $10 to do the job. And you know, when I heard the notification came up on my phone that the job was marked off, the client went back and tipped me $15. Five I would get their cut and whatever. And then the client came message me and say, I'm gonna have I'm gonna have some more work for you, make sure you're ready, whatever. And I was there looking at it and say it is imperative to deliver excellent work. And another point I would mention is the Facebook community that we have. Utilize it. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and because I realize that the more I think I know is the more I realize that I don't know. And
Right.
you might think you you might think that your way and is the best way, but then when you explore another way by virtue of communicating with other persons, and you realize that if for any reason the way that might not work at that time, and you might have to resort to another way.
Right.
It's best to know various ways of doing the same task.
Right. I like that.
And what's that? Another one I realize is well, you said three, but I have two more. Is the way how persons write, because not that I am bashing anybody, but I've outsourced jobs, and when the job was returned, and I look at how like the paragraphing and the grammar and so forth, persons need to pay attention to that, because you might do a job, and even you might do a job and the client may have more jobs, but because of you not spending enough time, to peruse the material and structure it in a professional way, that might hinder you from getting more jobs, because
Right.
as I made a reference to, we operate in a global scale and global scope, and persons refer to persons, and when persons come on your platform, they're looking to your reviews and so forth. So, and one final thing, you said three, but one final thing is communication.
Yes.
The other day I was at level 1 for a good while, and then I was poised for level 2. I got I was doing a job for a gentleman that was working for the United Nations down in Austria, and I was getting a whole lot of work from him,
Wow.
and I outsourced 4 of the jobs, and and 4 of the jobs came back more than 3 days late, and as a result of that, I was pushed back to a normal level because of the lateness. And I'm not bashing anybody, but if you're doing a job and the, separate and apart from that, the person, they were not communicating to say, I'm going to be late and so forth, because I am basically the middle person, so I have to go back and relate to the person that gave me the job. So it's important to communicate. Things can happen at any time, but communication, well, not if effective communication and timely, because you have to give the person latitude or leverage so that they can work with. Yeah. So
Right.
uh,
That communication is so important to me on so many different levels. There's like no excuses to not to communicate. We all have phones. It's too easy to communicate. So yeah, I totally agree with you, right? So be effective. I'm just writing down some of your notes, by the way. Be effective in your communications. You're totally right. So those were 4 good tips, and I'm going to repeat them because I just wrote them down. So for everybody, make sure that you write these down. Tip number 1, deliver excellent work, not good work, not great work, but excellent work, right, Ricardo? Use the Facebook community. So our students are in a Facebook community, and he's saying when you're in that community, because he's in it, don't be afraid to ask questions. You don't know it all. Communicate with others already doing it. Number 3, pay attention to your spelling, your grammar, and your structure, and be professional. I use Grammarly. I'll give you guys a link to Grammarly. For tip number 4, he says communication is so important. Don't be late on job. If something happens, communicate and be effective in your communication. So all really good points. I love them all. Great tips that you just gave us right there, Ricardo. And if anybody has any questions for Ricardo, we'll take those questions now. I'm going to read some of the stuff that's come in on Facebook. So Faithlyn says, I love doing transcription. It takes research, patience, dedication, proper proofreading, and grammar. So she's agreeing with you. Lakeisha is saying, for new people, what she does is she guides the persons by outlining the errors they make so that they can learn from them.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes they think they'll, get it all perfect right away, and that's not always the truth. And she says, you're right about the late delivery. It'll affect your business in such a negative way. We've got to be better on the delivery. And then Lakeisha also says, yes, communication is important. I've had issues where I needed more time and I let the client know what is happening, and clients are not mind readers. So let them know what's going on and you'll get extensions in your time. But without communicating, you're in a bad spot. So I do agree with that. All right. So the last thing that I want to ask you, does anybody else have any questions for Ricardo? So the last thing that I want to ask you is, for those people who are, or I have 2 more things to ask you, but for those people right now who are stressed out because they've lost their job, they're worried about the economy, we've got craziness with COVID-19 going on right now. It's absolutely horrifying. It's very sad. I just read an article yesterday that said the United Nations expects that 25 million jobs will be lost, globally. That's the global impact is going to be crazy. For people who are worried about it, would you recommend that they get started in transcription now? Would you recommend that if you're unemployed, you start to build your online brand and business?
Well, my recommendation is this. What well I actually took this from Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn said what you need is not more money, but more skills. Because if you are in an area where anything can happen, for example, you made reference to the tourism sector where
Yeah.
persons are not the travel restriction and so forth. You have to resort to other areas because you have to eat and you have responsibilities. So like now, the volume of work for the last couple of days, I've scaled down for me. And what I have opted to do is when I did the VA course. So I did transcription, and when I came back I did the VA course. And I never went through all the material on the VA course. So like now I am going back through some of the training material so that I can put up, familiarize myself with certain things like the graphics and social media management and so forth. So and one other thing, like persons who get jobs, and because you have a lot of jobs, you probably cancel some of the work and so forth. My advice is not to cancel the job, because you might have 5 or 6, but there's somebody out there with 0.
I love that.
Right? So don't cancel the job, but outsource the job, because just like how you started out at the very basic level and you had to take your time and build up. It's the same approach, a person should take. Don't cancel the job, but because we have a large Facebook community, and it don't I would recommend that you send it in the group and so forth, and because especially now where we basically need each other.
We do.
You know?
You're right. I also like that if you have too much work in, I always recommend that you extend your delivery date. So push your delivery date out, and never put your account on vacation mode, just extend your delivery date. So that helps it and prevents it from losing ranking. So if you're way backed up on orders and it usually you have a 2-day delivery date, just extend it to a 10-day delivery date. Maybe you'll get orders, maybe you won't, but at least your account is not, like you're not putting it on vacation mode. So very good tips. I thank you so much for coming on, Ricardo. Lakeisha says to add to your conversation, canceling will also drop your position in Fiverr. So
Right.
she's saying, yes, she agrees with you. Don't cancel. And Duran says extensions are the way to go. So don't do cancellations, do extensions. So yeah, so some really good tips right there. So I'm not going to keep you any longer. Do you have any transcriptions that are in your inbox right now? Do you have any work that you need to get done, or have you completed everything?
Well, no, I know, but I'm awaiting about, let me see, about 4. One person supposed to send me 3 and another person supposed to send me 1. So, well, like presently I'm working privately for this university professor in somewhere up in Massachusetts. Like she would send jobs to me and so forth. But um, let me see. I think earlier in January, this gentleman that comes in Mortal Kombat, named Darren Malibu McBee. That's his name. He runs this talk show, and they talk about drug abuse and so forth. And while I was doing his podcast, and this is why I made reference to deliver excellent work, because you might not know who you're working for. And when I went and Google his name and see all of his achievements and the different movies that he came in and so forth, and well, he's supposed after this chaos or whatever, he's supposed to come back, but you know that basically opened up my eyes one night when I sat up in my bed and I was doing his transcript, and I was like, you don't know who you are, you're working for. So it's always good to deliver excellent work.
So
Even if the
you've done work for celebrities, the United Nations, you're on retainer by a college professor right now. That's
Yeah.
crazy. That's awesome. Congratulations on that. That's great.
Oh, the Filipinos. I was doing some transcripts for this gentleman that hosts American football program, and he was paying me like $35 for audio, but he took me off Fiverr and I started working for him privately, and then Fiverr is not here, right?
They won't hear it.
And then I realized that I wasn't like the work just abrupt just stopped. So I messaged him a couple times and he sent me 1 file, but I normally get like 3 from him, or 5 in the Dropbox. I called him and he was telling me that he's paying me like $35 for an audio, and the Filipinos are taking $9 and $15. So he was asking me to reconsider. I was telling him, I would reconsider at 20, but
It's sometimes it's true. You will have people that will be cheaper than you, but as we've seen time and time again, also with a lot of customers, your value is your value and they will pay you for it. So you can't win them all, right? You can't win them all. But yeah, I mean, there's even uh people way more that charge way more than you, like Winnie, for example, and she makes no apologies for it, and Leighton and Lakeisha. And so, you start off at a low price and you increase. He'll come back to you though, if he loves your quality of work, and he'll realize, well, these audios, I might have had to get them, proofread, who
well,
knows, right?
well, this is how I look at things. Like I look at things from the perspective of being a student. You know, like something happened and it never something happened and it's not reflected on a positive, quote unquote positive note, and to you, you sit back and you look and say, maybe I need to re-strategize, and maybe this client here that I did, even though he never came back, but he made some excellent reviews
Yes.
on my platform. So he might not come back, he might not return, but somebody else with a bigger offer may come on my platform and look and realize that I did some excellent work for somebody before. And then, so I don't really look at it as a loss. I look at it from the perspective that it was an opportunity. And just like how the person came to me and then left to somebody else, it's an opportunity for the other person to,
Right.
you know.
I love it. I love it. I mean, your pride that you take in your work shows. Like, we can really see that you take great pride in the work that you do. So, continue to do that and keep it up. And I can also see that you're also outsourcing most of your work. I asked you about work that you have to do, and you're like, well, I sent it away to other people to do. That's something you should also be proud of. You don't have to hide from that, because that agency model, when you build yourself up and outsource the work, is a great model to work under. So be proud of that. Any lasting thoughts that you'd like to leave us with before we wrap it up?
Well, you know about Landmark, right?
No, tell us about Longmark.
No,
Oh,
well,
Landmark. Learning, you mean?
it's well,
Talk about learning in general, like for the people that don't know,
well,
talk about continuing education.
like I was doing some phone calls for a gentleman, right? He buys and sells property, and we were talking on Skype. And behind me, I have a little library behind me, and he was asking me about the books, what kind of material I have in my house, and we started talking about Les and Jim Rohn and so forth and so forth. And he was asking me, he asked me, why you read these material, and I told him that I realized that in order for me to go where I want to go, I have to feed on the material that persons who have done excellent work um have put in books and so forth, and audio tapes and so forth. So I would recommend 3 books to the persons who are listening. And one of my favorite books is Think and Grow Rich. And the other one is Rich Dad Poor Dad. And the other one is The Richest Man in Babylon. And those books, and like those books have done a lot for me, like in the past, because a few years ago I was doing very well, very well. And I made some mistakes and so forth, and so, like, presently I'm basically in the rebuilding mode.
Yeah.
Right. So I would recommend those 3 books, just like how persons can, because a lot of times the money that we spend a lot of money on things that doesn't do any nourishment to the mind. So
Yeah.
those 3 books, Rich Dad Poor Dad, The Richest Man in Babylon, and Think and Grow Rich.
I love it. Thank you for those
You could go on
recommendations.
YouTube sometime, and you listen to Les Brown, and you listen to Jim Rohn and Wayne Dyer. Those, because in as much as though you're online and you are working and so forth, and you have to sometimes, a lot of times I'm doing jobs, and like my mind get tired and I just want to just just put on the material and just, but then, you might remember a quote that somebody said that, if you want to go where I've never gone before, you have to do things that, and so, you have to kind of, feast upon those kind of material.
You're right.
Condition your mind.
You're
I
right.
remember one day, I was talking to Mr. Brian Paul, and he was asking me how much money I had in my account, and I was telling him, boy, I don't have the money, and he was saying how much money you have in your account, and I didn't, and like I gave him a figure, like I gave him about $100,000, and he said, that is what you see, and I say, yeah, and he was like, why you don't see 100 million, and so whenever I log on to my account and I have money in there, I add on two more zeros. I add on two more zeros, which means that I am looking forward to having more.
Yes.
And one final thing is that, this that I am doing is not just for me, but is to put me in a better position that I can do better, not for self, but for others.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. I appreciate that. And you're always so giving and, so active in the community that I appreciate that as well. So thank you. Thank you. Winnie said, great interview and great tips. So on that note, Ricardo, I just wanted to say thank you so much. I'll see you inside the Facebook group. You've been a wonderful inspiration to everybody here watching you. If you guys loved what Ricardo covered today and want to help me in thanking him for spending his time with us today, just quick, I'm tongue twisted. Just pop a quick thank you in the comments below, right? So Duran says, yes, you must always know your work. Faithlyn says, yes, you can't win them all. You got to choose, deliver quality, and they will return. People are getting a lot of things out of your interview here. Let's see. Misha said, very insightful interview on transcription and life in general. So thank you so much, Ricardo. Have a great evening. Bye, everybody. Bye. Bye, Ricardo. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Have a good night, everybody.